But ISIS did not come out of nowhere. They didn't come out of a vacuum. They were AQI, that is Al-Qaeda in Iraq. We'd been tracking them for about 2 years through our office in Jerusalem. And what happened was Osama bin Laden and his lieutenants were so repulsed, if you can believe anything would repulse Osama bin Laden, by the tactics of ISIS that they threw them out. And then eventually what happened was Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, that's the head of ISIS, declared himself the caliph and set up the caliphate. Now goes by Caliph Ibrahim. And although the president says this is not a war with Islam, I always say, we'll tell that to Caliph Ibrahim and what looks like about 40,000 of his soldiers. And the thing that's so significant here, and what's so brazen about the president saying that this was the JV team, and actually it's the exact opposite. This is now, and has been for at least over a year and a half, a standing army. They're not hiding in caves, Glenn, like Al-Qaeda did. Right. They're not in the shadows. They're a standing, moving army that is bent on control of what they call the Levant, which is the greater Middle East, which includes Israel, by the way.
Yep. And
they also have, expectations much broader than that, including here. So this idea that this was the JV team was absurd in the beginning, and we actually wrote Rise of ISIS when I was at Oxford this summer teaching on this topic, and I'll tell you what happened there. One of the guys that was one of the professors, well-known guy, but a very left of center, kind of believes everybody in the Middle East can work it out. When it came to ISIS, though, Johan Janimpour said this: crush them. Now, this is a guy from left of center who's basically a peacenik, and he said crush them. And that was in July, and it took the president until now to even exercise any remote reference. I call him the reluctant commander-in-chief, but this is a group that lethality is much more significant than Al-Qaeda has ever was.
All right, so here's the thing. A lot of people, the word Nazi's thrown around, for a lot of things, and usually it's just the seeds. Usually it's like, this is how the Nazis began. This is the tactics that the Nazis used at the very beginning, yada yada. But these guys are actually very Nazi-like already, and unlike the Nazis that used to hide it, these guys aren't hiding it at all. They're way out in the open.
That's absolutely correct. And like I had 200 of my family members, my grandparents' generation, my great aunts and uncles that were in Germany and Poland that were wiped out in the Holocaust. So I'm very reluctant to use that analogy. I'm using it here for 3 reasons. Number one, you just said it. The tactics are even more brazen and open. Not as lethality is not there yet, but potential lethality much greater. That's number one. Number two.
Wait. Why do you say that?
Because they have something that the Nazis didn't have because technology wasn't there, and they have uranium. And uranium can create radioactive material, can create a dirty bomb or worse. So you could have this increased lethality. They don't have the mechanics of the Nazis yet, but look at their goals. They're marking Christians in Iraq with a Nazarene, an N, a nun, which is the Arabic N for Nazarene. Why are they doing that? Because it's the same tactic. Identify the people you want to destroy is exactly what the Nazis did. And number 3, they have clearly stated their position. They're not trying to create the superior race as the Nazis did. It's the superior religion, or in the name of religion. So it's the same technique, same tactics, lethality that's not as mechanical yet, but potentially even greater. And like you said, they're very open and brazen on this, and you can't look, and we point this out in Rise of ISIS in the book, you can't look at, Glenn, ISIS in just a vacuum by itself. If you look at a map, you've got ISIS coming from the east going west towards Israel, and then you got Hamas coming from the west towards Israel. This is the great conflict here. So Hamas, ISIS, same groups, different leadership, same techniques, ISIS bigger. But if you put the number of standing troops with ISIS together with the standing troops of Hamas, you are approaching 60,000 troops. And I'm calling them troops because they're an army. That is bigger than a lot of the armies in the greater Middle East right now. So this is unbelievable.
And here's where I'm really concerned, Jay, is they're very, very smart. They are going after openly the West.
Yep.
They are using Sykes-Picot. I mean, these are not dummies.
Yep.
They know their history. They know the history of the Middle East far better than anybody else. And they're using the same kind of things. They're using Sykes-Picot, which goes back to World War I. That's exactly what the Nazis did, using all of the stuff that, we in the League of Nations did after World War I. And they had this grievance that they said, and this is why we have to go get them, and this is why we have all these problems. And these guys will actually be able to unite much of the Middle East for a long time. And unlike the Nazis, who had to hide what they were doing to the Jews and what they were doing to the Christians and the homosexuals, they had to hide those things to stop the shock and horror of their own population.
Right.
These guys, it will actually work to their advantage to do it out in the open.
That's because it's their recruiting tool. I mean, so when we see these things in the West, these beheadings, we're horrified. But what we need to understand, and again, we point this out in the book, we're horrified, but that is their recruiting tool. That's what's attracting U.S. citizens to join ISIS. The British have more jihadist Muslims that are now part of the jihad. They're Muslims that are English citizens, UK, that are fighting for ISIS than fight for Her Majesty's Army. So this is in the Royal Air Force or the Royal Army. So what's happened is...
Say that again. Say that.
Out of the shadows to do the recruiting. Yeah.
Wait, say that stat again, because I think that's phenomenal.
All right. So there are more Muslims fighting for ISIS from the UK than are fighting for Her Majesty's Armed Forces.
Jeez.
I mean,
how many is that? Is that over 1,000 now, Jay?
It was the first report was over 500. I'm sure it's over 1,000 now because the recruiting. And by the way, let me do who's complicit in this. Turkey is the entry point for these soldiers. They're going right up to Turkey, our NATO ally. We point all this out in the book. Our NATO ally is letting them in, letting them through, and actually arming them because you know what the Turks do not want? A strong Kurdistan. They don't want strong Kurds because that creates a problem for them on their border. So Glenn, you were mentioning the Sykes-Picot. This is their retribution for Sykes-Picot and their retribution for the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. This is their reestablishment of the caliphate, which is reestablishing the jihadist empire. This is the mode and method of which they're doing it. And like you said, the fact of the matter is, and then you got the president, funding the moderate rebels. Who they are, I don't know yet, and I'd like them to come forward a little bit. But the concern is that the potential damage to the United States here is grave. We wrote this book, like I said, while I was at Oxford. It's out right now on an e-book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Apple iBooks, but it comes out in paperback in a couple of weeks. And, Glenn, you've been sounding the alarm on this. The problem is we've got to get the country understanding who the enemy is, because this is different than Al-Qaeda.
What's amazing is the president won't do it. I did a special. We're doing For the Record on ISIS, as you know. Thank you for all of your help.
Yep.
But we're doing a special on For the Record this week. Last week, I did a special on Sykes-Picot. And once you understand Sykes-Picot, once you see, ISIS just made a video, the end of Sykes-Picot. So it's clear. All you have to do is listen to these guys. But let me go here. Jay, you remember when I first started talking about the reestablishment of a caliphate.
Yep.
And you watched it.
Right. How
many people, everybody said I was insane, to the point that I thought, you know what, maybe I am. Maybe this can't be. This can't be, because nobody will talk about this. Why was I so alone on that, Jay? Why were the people who knew what was happening, where we're headed, why were we so alone?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because people thought you, me, the few of us that were talking about this, we were the extremists. We overanalyzed the data. We were I remember somebody said about what you were doing, what I was doing, that we were making assumptions that are not in reality. You had the head of the NSA saying that terrorism is a state of mind. So this whole worldview, and this, by the way, passes, in my view, it passes Republican, Democrat. This is this worldview that, well, they really can't be that evil. They really can't be that bad. They really can't be that jihadist. Well, but they are. And the problem is, if you look at where they've started and where they've gone in this, 2.5 years or so that they've really been active, it's pretty amazing. Like you said, they're out in the open. They're not hiding what they're doing. They're bragging about it.
So here's the thing.
It is recruiting.
Here's the thing. We're talking to Jay Sekulow. He is the author of The Rise of ISIS. It's an ebook right now, and he's putting out an ebook now because the time is of the essence. It's coming out as paperback here in a couple weeks, but time is of the essence. You need to know who we're facing. I believe they're here already. But Rise of ISIS, the threat we can't ignore. You talk about Everybody wanted to believe that these guys weren't as bad, et cetera, et cetera. But the president now comes out and says, okay, oh, yeah, I know I called them a JV team. I know I said, nothing to worry about. They're not worse than Al-Qaeda. But the same advisors that allowed him to say those things, they're the ones advising us now. They're the ones still in the State Department. They're still the ones in the Pentagon and the NSA and the CIA.
Yep.
He hasn't changed anybody.
No.
If I'm the president of the United States and I've gotten it this wrong, I fire those people and just say, and no hard feelings, guys. It was great. We had a great run and you're a patriot and everything else. But I've got to go start talking to the people who saw this one coming over the horizon. Is there anything that gives you any confidence that we are at all meaning what we say, that we have a clue at all, anywhere, at any level?
No, because we picked the wrong side on every issue in the Middle East since the president's been in office. And, you said, what you just said, Glenn, is profound. And that is the president had a narrative for the Middle East. It all started with that speech in Cairo where he says, we're not a Jewish nation, we're not a Christian nation, we're a nation of principles. Or a nation of citizens, whatever that means. I mean, the Nazis were a nation of citizens. I mean, so that's a ridiculous analogy. But he went and made this narrative on the Middle East, and none of it planned, and none of it came out like he thought. So instead of changing your approach, this president basically doubles down on it. I'm listening to Samantha Powers and Susan Rice and these people at the NSA, and you're saying, how come we know more than they do?
Okay, can I ask you a question? And this is, and you don't feel free not to answer this, Jay,
Sure.
because this is me thinking out loud.
Okay.
And whenever I think out loud, I get in trouble, and everybody else around me
We always recommend that you don't
here we
think
go.
out loud.
Okay, so no, but just think this out. The president said 2 weeks ago that he wanted to organize the Middle East. That was his plan, to organize the Middle East.
Yep.
You know Sykes-Picot. I know Sykes-Picot. The Middle East knows Sykes-Picot. The Middle East believes this was the great, the real tragedy.
Right.
And quite honestly, the West behaved like barbarians. We lied. So we were wrong. Now, that being said, he wants to right the wrongs of the past. What does ISIL and everybody else want to do? They've got to reorganize the Middle East. You've got to get rid of all of these dictators.
Right.
And so once you do that, then the whole meaning behind Sykes-Picot falls apart, and you can't control that section of the world at all.
And Glenn, that's exactly why they initially changed their name from ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, to ISIL, which was the Levant, which was the greater Middle East.
So
I don't think that's far-fetched.
No, wait, I'm not there yet. Hang on.
All right.
So here's the president. He comes out and he's been for all of these things that have destabilized the Middle East. Give George Bush a piece of this too, but destabilize the Middle East. Then he goes into Libya. Then he says he wants Assad. Assad is really the last real big pin to fall before you get to people like Jordan. So we are arming these people who are not going to fight ISIS. They are going to fight Assad. Correct. Are we not just helping them by running arms to these rebels?
Glenn, I'm not only going to not distance myself from your comment, I think you're absolutely correct. I have said this, and this is, believe me, I think Assad is a bad guy.
I do too.
You know what? He is not, he's bad. He's horrible.
He's not ISIL.
Does anybody believe that Abu Bakr el-Baghdadi, that's his nom de guerre, his war name, nom de guerre, does anybody believe that the Caliph Ibrahim is better than Assad? I doubt it. No one does. So here's what you got. If we were going to fund anybody, and I'm not saying to do this, by the way, you'd be better off funding Assad's army to take these guys out
yeah.
than you would be because they are trying. Listen, they're not throwing up Sykes-Picot just to make a historical point. They believe they were wrong, severely wrong. They were double-handed, double-dealt, and they're trying to correct it. And they blame us. So that puts the United States squarely in their sights.
Jay, you are fantastic. We'll talk to you again, have you on the show, and then on Thursday or on Wednesday, for the record, we have more details on the rise of ISIS and ISIL. Wednesday night at 8:00, only on the Blaze TV. The new book, it's an ebook now. It's out as an ebook for urgent purposes. Please read this: Rise of ISIS: The Threat We Can't Ignore, by Jay Sekulow from the ACLJ. Jay, keep it up, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Glenn.
God bless.